In the tranquil heart of Germany, nestled amidst verdant hills and quaint cottages, lay the town of Lengerich. It was here that Hans, a man carrying the weight of profound loss, lived a quiet life with his wife, Eva. Once vibrant and lively, their home had been hushed by the echoes of tragedy, the untimely death of Hans's parents in a car accident years prior, still casting long shadows. Their lives were disrupted anew with the arrival of a terse telegram, bearing news of the death of Hans's grandfather, Werner. A man of stern countenance but tender heart, Werner had been Hans's last living connection to his past. The grief welled up within him, filling his heart with sorrow. But alongside grief was a sense of duty, the need to sift through Werner's belongings, preserving memories while discarding the detritus of a life well lived. As Hans stepped into Werner's old house, he was instantly submerged in nostalgia. The creaking wooden floors, the smell of old books, and the quiet tick-tock of the ancient grandfather clock were as familiar as they were comforting. It was in the cobweb-laden attic that Hans stumbled upon an object that seemed decidedly out of place, an eerie painting concealed under a dusty tarpaulin. The painting was grotesque, yet captivating, depicting a monstrous figure with fiery eyes and snarling teeth. A chill ran down his spine as he looked at it, but something within Hans stirred. Despite its disconcerting appearance, he felt drawn to it. The painting, he decided, would come home with him. Hans arrived home, his car laden with artifacts from his grandfather's life. Among these remnants of a bygone era, the haunting painting he had discovered in the attic held a peculiar place. Hans felt a strange connection to it, a sense of belonging that overpowered the unsettling dread it stirred within him. Eva, on seeing the painting, recoiled. Her eyes widened as they traced the grotesque figure etched onto the canvas. The creature seemed to stare back, its eyes almost alive. "Hans, this thing, it's disturbing," she murmured, her voice barely more than a whisper. But Hans, ensnared by the painting's inexplicable allure, dismissed her concerns. He decided to hang the painting in the corridor, a space where the morning sun would bathe it in a warm glow. The figure in the painting, once hidden in a dusty attic, now dominated their home, its ghastly face the last thing they saw before they retired to their rooms each night. The house, once their sanctuary, now seemed different. The air grew heavy, the silence unsettling. The painting's monstrous eyes, once lifeless, seemed to awaken. It wasn't just the eerie glow they reflected in the dim light. It was the fact they appeared to follow their every move, tracking them through the corridor and into the rooms. Hans, usually rational and unflappable, found it hard to shrug off the feeling of being watched. Eva's apprehension grew. She was convinced the painting was not just an artifact, it was an unwanted guest, an intrusive presence. Despite the warmth of their home, an undercurrent of chilling unease had settled in. As days turned into nights, they felt a creeping dread that something was beginning to stir within the walls of their home. Life in the once peaceful household of Hans and Eva grew increasingly strained. Each passing day seemed to bring with it a fresh wave of unease, every corner of their home tainted with the unsettling presence of the painting. The once familiar corridors and rooms now felt foreign, the spectral presence of the monstrous creature seeming to invade their sanctuary. One afternoon, a discordant crash echoed through their home, shattering the oppressive silence that had begun to settle in. Eva, startled, rushed towards the source of the noise, her heart pounding in her chest. Her cherished violin, a family heirloom that had been passed down through generations, lay shattered on the living room floor. Eva's breath hitched as she picked up the broken pieces of her precious instrument. There was no plausible explanation. The violin had been securely placed on its stand, far from the edge of the table. The stringed instrument, once a source of comfort and joy, was now another casualty of the inexplicable occurrences that were beginning to plague their home. Hans, too, was taken aback by the destruction. He struggled to find a logical explanation, the analytical part of his mind grappling with the growing fear that something sinister was at play. The house felt different, the atmosphere thicker with a palpable tension they couldn't shake off. The dread surrounding the painting intensified. It was as if the monstrous figure had begun to stretch its influence beyond the canvas. It felt more alive, its fiery eyes burning brighter, its snarling teeth seeming more pronounced. The details of the creature, once merely unsettling, now seemed horrifyingly real. The eerie changes didn't stop there. When the lights dimmed and the shadows grew long, it was as if the monstrous figure was shifting within the confines of the painting. Its hulking form seemed to grow larger, its dark silhouette casting an ominous shadow on the corridor walls. It was no longer just an image. The creature, once restricted to the canvas, seemed to be on the cusp of breaking free, threatening to invade the very reality of their existence. The couple's nights were filled with disturbed dreams and cold sweat. Hans and Eva could not escape the feeling of being watched, the creature's piercing gaze a relentless presence. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind, every shifting shadow seemed to echo the impending horror. Sleep deprivation and fear took a toll on their sanity. The days became a blur of anxiety, the nights a terrifying anticipation of the unknown. The painting, a chilling embodiment of their fears, continued to dominate their lives, its presence becoming an ominous portent of the terror yet to unfold. The monstrous figure, they felt, was no longer a painting, but a living entity that threatened to consume their reality. The curse of the painting had truly begun to unfold. The specter of the painting, the monstrous figure that haunted their every waking moment, seemed to be taking a life of its own. Day by day, hour by hour, the quiet and secure life that Hans and Eva had once enjoyed was becoming a forgotten memory. The painting, once a mere object of art, albeit a grotesque one, was now a nexus of bizarre and unexplained phenomena that were steadily pulling their lives into a vortex of terror. They started hearing strange noises, soft whispers in the dead of the night, like the wind carrying a secret conversation, a low growl reverberating from the depths of the house, and the disconcerting sound of scraping, as though clawed fingers were raking against the wall. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains seemed magnified, each sound adding another layer to their growing anxiety. Shadows started to play tricks on their minds. At times they would catch a glimpse of a hulking figure in the corner of their eyes, but when they turned to look, they would find nothing but the empty hallway and the menacing painting. On other occasions, they would see a fleeting shadow darting across the room, or notice an ominous silhouette against the window, only to find no source for these spectral apparitions. And then, there was the incessant feeling of being watched, the sense of an unseen presence lurking around them. They could feel eyes on them, feel the weight of an unseen gaze, pricking at the back of their necks, raising the hairs on their arms. It was as if they were never alone, as if they were sharing their home with an unwelcome guest who had made its abode within the painting. The tension escalated to a nearly unbearable level. Their once cozy home was now a house of mysteries and unseen horrors. The painting was at the center of it all, the monstrous figure an unblinking sentinel, an overseer to their unfolding nightmare. The strange phenomena became more frequent, more vivid, and more terrifying, always linked to the grotesque creature from the canvas. Dinner conversations were replaced with tense silences and whispered worries. Nightly routines were disrupted by the fear of what the darkness might bring. Sleep was elusive and filled with nightmares that were more real than any dream had a right to be. The couple grew increasingly isolated, caught in the grip of a terror that they couldn't understand or explain. Friends and family became distant memories as they focused on surviving each terrifying day and each horrifying night. Their existence was now dominated by the monstrous figure in the painting, the creature with fiery eyes and a snarling abyss for a mouth. It stood there, larger than life, a constant reminder of their inescapable dread. The painting had ceased to be an object, becoming instead the monstrous entity that held sway over their lives, its curse growing stronger with each passing day. The strange noises, fleeting shadows, and chilling sensations of being watched were just the beginning. The painting was just beginning to reveal its true horrors, and Hans and Eva were the unwilling victims of the nightmare that was unfolding within their home. In the grip of their escalating horror, Hans and Eva found their rational minds overpowered by fear. The painting, the focal point of the terrifying occurrences, had to be removed. With hearts pounding and hands trembling, they approached the monstrous figure that had dominated their lives. They tried to take it down, their fingers slipping on the heavy, ornate frame. But the painting refused to budge. It was as if the monstrous figure was anchored to the wall, an inseparable part of their home. The more they tugged and pulled, the more it seemed to resist, its fiery eyes boring into them, reflecting a malicious glee. Unable to remove it, they decided to cover it, hoping to curb its unsettling influence. A heavy drape was hung over it, hiding the grotesque creature from sight. But even veiled, the painting's ominous presence permeated their home, the strange noises and spectral apparitions continuing unabated. As the days wore on, the painting, once confined to its canvas, began to manifest more forcefully. Subtle movements within the frame turned into noticeable shifts. The fiery eyes blinked, the snarling mouth opened, and the hulking figure began to push against the boundaries of the painting. One night, they witnessed a sight that froze their blood. The heavy drape fell away, revealing the monstrous figure stepping out of the canvas. The walls echoed with a low, guttural growl as it fully emerged, the creature's grotesque form towering in the dimly lit corridor. Its fiery eyes gleamed with a predatory hunger as it started hunting, relentlessly pursuing them through the house they once called home. Hans and Eva tried to hide, desperation driving them from room to room, but the creature, attuned to their fear, followed them with a chilling determination. They attempted to barricade themselves, stacking furniture against the doors. But the creature was relentless. Its growls reverberated through the house as it threw itself against their makeshift barriers, the wood groaning under the force. The once safe corners of their home were now hunting grounds. Every shadow could hide the creature. Every sound could signal its approach. The painting, once merely a grotesque work of art, had unleashed a living nightmare that hunted them with a ferocious persistence. Despite their desperate attempts to evade it, the monstrous figure seemed to be always a step behind, its fiery gaze a constant threat. The dread of their impending doom hung heavy, their home no longer a sanctuary, but a labyrinth of terror. Their lives, once quiet and uneventful, were now marked by the chilling presence of a monster. The painting they had brought into their home had brought with it a curse, an unimaginable horror that loomed over them. Their attempt to hide was proving futile, the creature always finding them, the chilling game of hide-and-seek escalating into a terrifying fight for survival. The relentless game of hide-and-seek ended abruptly, their desperate hopes of evasion shattered by the monstrous figure. Their whispered prayers of survival hung suspended in the chilling air, their terrified hearts pounding in sync with the creature's heavy, anticipatory growls. They found themselves backed into a corner, the monstrous figure blocking the only exit. Its fiery eyes seemed to sparkle with a cruel satisfaction, its snarling mouth twisted into a horrifying smirk. The walls of their once safe home closed in, the safe haven turning into a claustrophobic death trap. Eva clutched Hans's hand, her eyes wide with terror. Hans wrapped his arm around her, a futile attempt to shield her from the approaching horror. His mind raced, frantically searching for a way out, but his eyes were met with the merciless gaze of the creature, the physical embodiment of his grandfather's haunting painting. As the monster lunged at them, Hans experienced a harrowing epiphany. He remembered his grandfather's lonely death, the hushed whispers in the town, the rumors of the old man's terror-filled last days, the painting, the monster, the fear, it all fell into place. Werner had not died alone. He had died in terror, just like they were about to. The thought hit him like a punch in the gut, the horror of his realization intensifying the dread of his impending death. They were not the painting's first victims, nor would they be its last. With a guttural roar that shook the very foundations of the house, the creature pounced, its talon-like claws extended in a horrifying display of raw power. As the creature's claws connected, Hans and Eva's screams echoed through the silent corridors of their home, a chilling duet to the monster's triumphant growls. The beast's claws sunk into their flesh, each jab like the bite of a venomous snake. The sensation of their skin being ripped away was an agony beyond their worst nightmares, a pain so profound it bordered on the surreal. Blood seeped from the gruesome wounds, soaking their clothes and pooling around their trembling bodies. Their terrified screams morphed into guttural cries of despair, their voices hitching as they tasted the sharp tang of their own blood. The monster leaned closer, its hot, fetid breath washing over them, filling their senses with the putrid scent of decay. Each breath was a struggle, their lungs filling with the coppery stench of their spilled life essence. The creature's maw, a grotesque orifice lined with serrated teeth, opened wide, and it lowered its head, beginning a horrifying feast. The sensation of being consumed alive was an unimaginable torture. They could feel the monster's teeth tearing into their flesh, hear the sickening sound of their bodies being devoured. Their screams grew weaker, their world narrowing down to the brutal reality of their gruesome end. Slowly, the screaming ceased, their bodies now lifeless husks in the monster's grasp. Their lifelights, once so vibrant and full of hope, had been cruelly snuffed out. The monstrous figure, satiated and content, released a final triumphant growl, its voice echoing around the silent house. Its duty completed, the creature lumbered back to the haunting painting, the portal from whence it had emerged, its monstrous form melting back into the canvas as it disappeared from the physical world. Their home stood once again as a silent guardian of a terrifying secret, the walls stained with a tale of horror that would forever remain untold.